All praise to the Most High, Yahweh, Ba'asham, Hamashiach Yahushai. Today I'd like to reiterate what I brought out in the past video regarding the Celts. But to know about Europe, you have to know that this was also spoken of in the scriptures. Places like Greece, places like Turkey, places like Tarshish, which is in Spain, Iberian Peninsula, Gaul, which is France. A lot of these were mentioned in the Bible. A lot of them were mentioned in the Apocrypha, and a lot of them were mentioned in the Sefer. I'm talking about the names of these different places. And you have to read in order to find out where these places are. I want to take us first to Jonah, the book of Jonah in the scriptures. And I want to read Jonah chapter 1, verse 1. And it reads, Now the word of the Most High came unto Jonah the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry against it, meaning prophesy against it, for their wickedness is come up before me. But Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Most High, and went down to Joppa, and he found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare thereof, and went down into it to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Most High. Jonah was trying to avoid doing the work of the Most High. So he decided to get on the ship and go to Tarshish, which is in the Iberian Peninsula, which is in Spain, showing you that during the time of the northern kingdom split from the southern kingdom, that the northern kingdom were going to and fro into Europe. They were going to and fro into Africa. They were going to and fro into the eastern parts of Asia. So I want to show you that this happened prior to Paul going up into Europe and prior to some captivities. So let me show you a couple of things. A couple of weeks ago I showed you this chart. It's called The Legacy of Israel and Edom, right? And I showed you this chart, and I showed you the lineages, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Then it says the 12 tribes of Israel. Then we drop down. I'm not going to go over the whole chart because I went over it before. But as we drop down, I showed you that how the Israelites migrated into Europe as Celts, Goths, Saxons, Irish, Scots, Danes, etc., the 12 tribes of Israel under the new covenant. So I want to show you what the Celts actually look like, and the Saxons, and the Irish, and the Scots, right? I want to show you what they actually look like, a description of them, okay? And we know over here with Esau, as you see, his tree drops down to the Edomites. Okay, moved to South Judea, mixed with Judites, reducing Herod. Some of the Jews migrated to Egypt, Asia Minor, Greece, Khazar, etc. Became known as Jews. How can Esau become known as Jews? He was the Khazars and Ashkenazim. Okay, so we see that because we're going to probably touch on this too. But I want to show you how the Israelites were Celts and what they look like. This book is called Riddles of Prehistoric Times. Again, Riddles of Prehistoric Times by James H. Anderson. It was published in 1911. As you can see right there, this is James Anderson. Caucasian man. So let's go to page 57, which is here. We're going to go to the top, and I'll show you what the Celts look like, and the Iberians. Now it says the Iberians in ancient times inhabited the western and southern part of Europe and northern part of Africa. In fact, parts reach from the Mediterranean Sea. This is where Jonah took off from, parts of the Mediterranean Sea. And where did he go? To the Iberian Peninsula, which was called Tarshay. The Basque in Spain and France. The little dark Welshmen. The Scotch and black Celts. See that? So the Celts, or the Celts, they were black people. See that? And black Celts in the west of the Shannon River in Ireland. So people in the Iberian Peninsula were black. The Celts were black. The Scotch were black. The Welshmen of the Scots were black. The Spaniards and the French were also black. It says, as well as the same kind of men in Britain and Aquitaine in France. You see that? The Guanches of the Canary Islands and the Berbers in Africa are all probably the remnants of the race. So what does that tell you? That the Israelites were black. They were the first Celts. Let's flip over to the next page. This is page 58. Let's drop to the bottom of the paragraph here. Let's drop to the bottom of the page, the last paragraph here. It says, it is said that the first people of Ireland were the Formatians. Now, if you could pull that up, you probably have a hard time even pulling that up on Google because the word is so old. It says they were a dark, stunted race, utterly savage, using rough, unwrought stone implements. So far as can be learned, they did not know the use of fire. It is said they came from Africa on ships. So if they didn't know the use of fire, how did they get to these places, like Ireland? They sailed on ships. Doesn't mean that they were ignorant. They had the navigational skills to sail the oceans. And they probably could make fire. It's just records don't show that they made fire. This is page 161. It reads, well, who have been the peoples to carry the light? The Most High's laws and commandments and light to the Gentiles and to the ends of the earth. The Most High's servants, Israel, were to do it. The Anglo-Saxons alone have done it. Therefore, the Anglo-Saxons are what? Israel. Let's drop down. Anglo-Saxon Celts communities the world over are the Most High's chosen people. His instruments, Israel, which means ruling with the Most High. You see that? So the ancient Celts were black people and they were the Israelites. They were the Israelites. Here's a book that's called The Medieval Empire of the Israelites. The Medieval Empire of the Israelites. Okay. Author Robert Grisham, Vladimir Melanov. We're going to go to page 177, and we're going to read in the middle of the page. It reads, it turns out the Celts taught the Romans how to obtain iron and steel. The Celts knew various forms of thermal treatment of steel. They used notches, shaft furnaces, bellows, and welding. And another. The Scythians had well-developed handicrafts. The fighters wore plate-like metal armor, the predecessors of chainmail helmets, and had steel swords. Remember, Saul had helmet. He had metal plates on his chest. Okay, so the Israelites had this trade during the time of King Saul, King David on down. And when the tribes split, when the southern kingdom and northern kingdom split, a lot of the Israelites went north, a lot of them went west, and a lot of them went east, and they took their trades with them. and they taught the other nations. And so as you can see here, it says it turns out the Celts taught the Romans how to obtain iron and steel. This is before the Romans took off, during the time of the Greeks. So the Celts were the Israelites, and we taught all nations. Here's another book. It's called Being Remarkable Addresses by Way of Embassy from East India Company of the United Provinces to the Emperor of Japan, containing a description of their several territories, cities, temples, and fortresses, their religions, laws, and customs, their prodigies, wealth, and gorgeous habits, the nature of their soil, plants, beasts, hills, rivers, and fountains, with the character of the ancient and modern Japanese. Now, the people of Japan come from China, and this book explains how they were one nation, and the people of Japan were outcasts. Okay, I'm not going to go into that, but I can show you something real quick, just so you can see. Right here, we call them Moab and Ammon. It says the peopling of Japan and first plantation, meaning habitation thereof, was from China. See that? The peopling of Japan and first plantation thereof was from China. So the people of Japan come from China. Moab and Ammon, according to Ezekiel, were cast into the far east. Right? This is as by their own relations about 700 years since, proceeding first from a grand conspiracy and rebellion. So Moab and Ammon fell out. And there were people in Japan, and there were people in China already prior to Moab and Ammon coming there. All right. Where did those people come from? Those people came from the split in Genesis chapter 11. Genesis chapter 11, remember the Most High changed the languages. And so people went into various parts of the world after that. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 25, verse 10, it says, unto the men of the east with the Ammonites, Ammon, and will give them in possession, that the Ammonites may not be remembered among the nations. So they went into Babylon in the captivity, and then they went even further, which was China. Okay, so when they went into India and China, this is what we just read in here about the conspiracy that they had with the people of the east, where they were fled even further into another land, right here. The peopling of Japan and first plantation thereof was from China, as by their own relations about 700 years since, proceeding first from a grand conspiracy and rebellion. That's Ezekiel 25 and 10. Only to banish the rebels, his dominions, and suffer them to spend the remainder of their miserable lives in the desolate isles against Corco, which he granting, they were transported thither. And, as we said before, from a few poor and malcontented exiles began a small plantation, which in process of time, growing up, has now become a famous and formidable empire, standing in competition with that of China, and since called Japan. So Japan came from China, which was where Moab and Ammon were cast to the far east by Babylon. All right, to the men of the east. So let's go back over. So we're going to go back to the beginning of this. It's called the Embassy to the Emperor of Japan. It doesn't give page numbers. This is a reprint, and by it, I just want to show you how Japheth became the progenitor of the northern countries, but Israel and other nations were there. Right? It says, Here it will now seem amiss to give you an account, according to all writers have it, how this our old world was peopled. Asia, Africa, and who were the fathers or chief captains giving denominations to the people and settling them in their several plantations, habitations, beginning with the Holy Scripture. So on the next page, now it goes into Japheth, right? It talks about the sons of Japheth. Noah and his 3 sons, Japheth being the eldest, his offspring spread themselves over Asia and Europe. See that? Moses recounts these to be the sons of Japheth. This is going into Genesis 9 and 10. Moses recounts these to be the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Terah. Gomer, as they say, first settled his colony along the Caspian Sea, where Strabo and Pliny placed the Sumerians. The sons of Gomer, being Ashkenaz, Riphat, and Togarmah, planted other colonies, laying the foundation of the kingdom of Media, which other contradicts, I have to zoom in because hard to read far off, which other contradict, supposing that he settled in the latter or lesser Asia, others the country of Hessen or Saxony, but out of what records we know not. Now Eusebius, that's one of the Roman fathers. Let's drop down. See, they kept records on all this stuff, and we act like they didn't keep records. But they got records from the people of the past. What do you think they do over there in the Vatican? They got scholars over there dissecting ancient scripts, ancient texts. That's what they do for a living every day. And you want to tell me they don't have records of the peoples of the world? That's why I say they know that the Negroes are Jews. It says here, but Magog, Japheth's second son, inhabited Celeria, Mada, and the territory of Media. Javan the third was father to the Ionians, who in process of time growing great with other conjoined nations. Who is that? Right there, Esau and the Khazarian nation. That's how they grew great with other conjoined nations. All right, I'll speak on that in a minute. Called themselves the Greeks, their country Grecia. From these, the Latins, which is the Romans. From these, the Latins drew their original, whereupon at first a great part of Italy was called Greece. Before Italy was called Italy, it was called Greece. That's why we call it the Roman Greco Empire. And still several names of Italian cities do undeniably show the extract of the Latins from the Greeks, which the ancient writers affirm by making Javan to be by fronted Janus. Like Romus and Romulus, their father was Janus, which is where the nation of Rome comes from, signifying father both to the old Greeks and new Latins, descended from him. The sons of Javan were 4. Elisha, who planted in the islands of the Mediterranean Sea, Tarshish, from whom Tarsus in Sicily bears the name, and Kittim, a place in Cyprus, where between the two utmost points, Thanas and Dades, in the interest formerly stood the city Kittim, and still the point Dades bears the name of Cape Chitty. All right, so I'm going to stop right there because I could go on and on. There's a lot here, and the writing is so small. But the information, I want to just let you know that the information is there. So now it's going into Shem down here, right? I'm just going to bring out small inserts here, but I highlighted this. It says, in Africa and Asia, is talking about Shem, full of unprecedented deserts. So Africa was uncharted territory, right? Only the Canaanites had been there, the Phoenicians. And inaccessible mountains and many islands, of which several were discovered by the ancients. Who were the ancients? The Israelites. And since by our moderns, not thought worthy the labor of cultivation, amongst which our Japan lay, a long time follow, because Japan was also desolate, till by a necessitous calamity a few miserable exiles, being, as they say, banished from their country, were enforced to plant there, which from such poor beginnings and unwilling undertakers have insensibly, by degrees in few ages, shot up from nothing to be a most potent and formidable empire. So it's saying that the Japanese did the same thing as the Israelites when they went into the areas of Africa. They went into Africa as nothing and came out something, right? They were the kings of West Africa. They're doing a comparison here. Here's a book called Israel's $5 Trillion Secret. Israel's $5 Trillion Secret. I'm going to turn to page 62. Now I just want to show you something about the Khazarian nation and the Japhetic nation, because the Khazars came from Esau. It says here, it says, in the 1st century AD, the Chinese drove their Han neighbors westward. From the 5th century onward, many of these westward bound tribes were called Turks. The Khazar language was supposedly a Chuvash dialect of Turkish. The Khazars were a Turkic tribe, so Esau was a Turkic tribe, and erupted from the Asian steppes, probably in the 5th century of our era. The Khazars had been under Hun. You ever heard of Attila the Hun? These were kings, Huns. Hun Tutelich. Then under Turkish Tutelich. After the eclipse of the Turks in the middle of the 7th century, it was their turn to rule the kingdom of the north, and they did. So they took over Japheth. See that? The Khazars, which is Esau, took over Japheth kingdoms.
This is the word of the Lord of hosts. I took you from the pastures and from following the sheep to be prince over my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone and have destroyed all the enemies in your path. I will make you a great name among the great ones of the earth. I will assign a place for my people in Israel. There I will plant them, and they shall dwell in their own land.